Train now arriving at platform 1 is for Peterborough and London King's Cross only. Platform 1 for Peterborough and London King's Cross only. First class accommodation towards the front of the train, standard class accommodation towards the rear. Train now arriving at platform 1, Peterborough and London King's Cross only.
Hello, I'm Betty Elmer. Grantham's first railway station, now long gone, was called Ambergate. It opened in 1850 and was located on the wharf at the end of the Grantham Canal. The Great Northern Line station opened 2 years later. During the next 100 years, Grantham developed into a major railway town, a premier depot. So, come with me and climb aboard the old 6.5 special. We start our journey by meeting several highly respected railwaymen from the golden age of steam. Firstly, we meet Jerry Edwards.
I was born in 1920 at a little place called Whittlesea near Peterborough, and I left school at 14. I went into the building trade for 2 years and then applied for a job at Whittlesea's as station master, you see, as a lad porter. And the first thing the station master said to me, "Edwards, if you get this job, you will be light to all the travelling public. To a lady you'll say madam if she asks a question, and to a gentleman you'll say sir." I said, "Yes, thank you very much, sir." And then he said, "Now there's 3 systems before you get the job. You will start as a casual. So many months from that, you will, if you pass, you will go to a supernumerary. And then so many months after that, you will be made regular." "Right," he said. Well, I stuck that job for, 6 months, and I was talking to a train crew, and they said, "Why don't you come into the loco? It's better money." So I applied to go into the loco, which was Peterborough Loco, a little place about a mile from the station was New England, which are the loco sheds. And I eventually got the job. And I always remember the first engine I cleaned, it was an Atlantic engine that was cleaned every day to go to King's Cross. It was called the King's Cross Flyer. And it was cleaned every day. I always remember climbing on top of the boiler, and when I'd finished, I was with a gang, like, and the fella in charge of the gang. I said, "Well, how do you get down from the top of the boiler?" He says, "Walk about with your eyes shut, lad." I wanted to go to Grantham, and I came to Grantham in 1940, you see, when the war was on then, you see. And to be a driver, it's a long, long ladder to climb. You'd got to be a cleaner. From a cleaner, you'd got to be a pass cleaner. That meant that you'd got to, when they wanted you firing, you went firing. When they didn't, you went cleaning. And then when you got to a pass cleaner, you got to be a regular fireman, you see. And then you worked your way up right through the links. The smallest link was the goods link, and then the passenger link, and then you went on the link that did all the branch trains. Then you went to that, and then eventually you got to the Pacific Link, which was the top link, and that's when you had arrived. The Grantham crews, in our job, what they call the locomotive crews, there was a rum lot of men. They would argue, they would shout at one another in the mess room, sometimes there'd be 1 or 2 fisticuffs, and the next minute they would give you a cup of mug of tea. I don't know whether this is unique about railway men, but that's what we was. There was a grand lot of men.
And now we meet Pete Shelbourne.
I did 12 years as a fireman, and I did 4 years of that in what was known as the Pacific Link at Grantham. Now, the Pacific Link was the top link. They had all the crack jobs. They had all the express trains to London, to Newcastle. And they had the Yorkshire Pullman, the Teestine Pullman, the White Rose, and some of these trains were advertised as non-stop trains between London and Leeds, although they weren't non-stop trains because they stopped south of Grantham to change the engine crews, and the train, when it came back from Leeds, was supposed to go non-stop to London, but it stopped outside Grantham Station to change crews. They also had the Flying Scotsman for years at Grantham. We used to work 10 o'clock out of London, which is the Flying Scotsman, 11:58 into Grantham, leave Grantham at 12:02, changing engines at Grantham it used to do, and go to Newcastle. And we worked it, a set of men from London to Grantham, relieved at Grantham, another set of men took it on to Newcastle, and we came back from Newcastle the same day with the Heart of Midlothian, back to Grantham. 166 miles to Newcastle, 166 miles back again, using about 10 ton of coal there and back. During the war, the A4 Pacifics, which were the streamlined engines, including the Mallard, Sir Nigel Gresley, at one time of day they all had birds' names, Guillemot, Kestrel and all that sort of thing. Then they changed the names and they went to Silver Link and Silver Jubilee and the Mallard, and 8 of these were transferred to Grantham Depot for safety reasons during the war, and they were for 3 years worked by Grantham men. These included the famous Mallard, and anybody who was in Grantham Loco, who was a driver or who was a fireman, will at some time have worked on the Mallard. Probably only moving it up and down the loco, or moving it on a short trip somewhere, or they may have been lucky enough to have had it on a trip to London and back, or to York and back, or to Newcastle and back. But the Mallard in those days was no different to any other engine, other than it had the name the Mallard. It was done up especially to break the world record when it did 126 miles an hour between Stoke and Lytham. Carrying on about the Mallard, I personally fired on the Mallard, and I drove the Mallard. The Flying Scotsman was another engine which was stabled at Grantham for 2 or 3 years, 4472. Very famous engine, went to America, and a friend of mine went with it. He was an inspector in charge of the Flying Scotsman when it went to America on a 9-month tour of the United States. And that chap's name is Mr. Alan Richardson. Some people will remember his father probably, because he was shedmaster at Grantham Depot for 9 years. Those were the days when railways were railways. The comradeship had to be seen to be believed. Anybody that was in any trouble, somebody would go and say, "What's up, mate? Can we give you a hand?" That you don't find today. But it was part and parcel of railway life in the days that I was there, and I was there from 1941 to 1988, 46 years on the footplate, my life. And I really enjoyed my life on the railway, and if I had my time to come over again, I would do exactly the same with no changes.
Working on the railway was often a proud family tradition. Tracy Philpott.
When I was a little girl, about 5 or 6, we used to go downtown shopping down Dysart Road, and when the trains used to approach the bridge, we used to stand and wave to the guards, and they used to wave back. It'd either be my dad, my granddad, or somebody else we knew, and sometimes the drivers used to pip their horn at us.
Tracy's father, Mick Gibson.
I was a fireman. You exercise yourself, you was fit. And then over the years, we come out, I went out on the trains as a guard. Yeah, well, we used to travel along in the guard's van, and if you was going at speed, sometimes there'd be a bit of oscillation from side to side. You had to sort of balance yourself inside to stop you getting knocked about all over. We used to make a drink on the train in there. They used to have a dish on the top, and you used to stand your can in, boil your water. Also, if you fancied a bit of toast, I used to have a little fork, and used to make some toast on the fire. You know, it's better like that than what it is under the grill at home. Yeah, when I was firing, we used to, it was rather hot on the footplate, and we had to time the train. But in the old days, there was no speedometers on the trains, not as they are now. And you had to sort of gauge your times between either mile posts or telegraph poles. Well, when we was on the freight side, when you was working them, you was probably travelling at about 20, 30 mile an hour. But when you was on the expresses, anywhere up to about 80 to 90 mile an hour on the express trains. With the engines, they used to be, if you had the same engines all the week, or different, or the same class, but they always used to be different to fire. And then, as well, you had drivers and drivers that knew how to drive an engine, and drivers that thought they did, but they used to make you work hard. And it was a sweaty job, and dusty. Yeah, the types of engines I've been on was like the Mallard, the Flying Scotsman, also freight engines, a good old mixture. The Green Arrow, a lot of named engines who were based at our depot. And we used to be a key depot on the main line. Towards the end, they cut our depot down, and we used to go to places, but then they knocked them all out. You went on shorter journeys, but they were very nice. It was interesting in the old days. It was a treat some days to go to work.
And Tracy's grandfather, Charles Chambers, who worked in the Frodingham link on the ironstone trains.
Now we used to get the engine ready, up to a high dyke. As soon as we got the high dyke, we used to mash. That was the first job to make the tea. And back up onto the train. We used to get about half an hour to get the train ready. Then we used to more or less leave, straight across, down through Sleaford, Boston, through to Burley Marsh, just down here. Now, when we arrived at Burley Marsh, we'd wait there for the empties to come from Scunthorpe. They were worked by Grimsby men. We'd change over with them. We'd take the empties back through the high dyke. They would take the ironstone through to Scunthorpe, ready for smelting into iron or steel, whatever they made of it. Now, I really loved the ironstone job, but I didn't like passenger work. No, I didn't like passenger work at all. But the ironstone, I really loved it, yes. Now, these engines that was on the ironstone, they were called tangos, had a very long firebox. That's them right to the end of the box. Now, the speed on the ironstone trains should be 25 miles an hour. See, we only had the brakes on the engine, no more brakes. Brakes on the engine only. Then we had 29 ironstone wagons. Then after we changed over and back with the empties, it was 45 miles an hour with the empties. But once again, brakes only on the engine, not on the empties. See, the speed of when you was on an ironstone train, as I say, was just 25 miles an hour. The wheels on a Tango were very small indeed, whereas the wheels on a Pacific, they were 6'8", and you had to work very hard indeed. Now, most of my firing was done on the ironstone and the empties. But once you got onto the main line on express trains, it was a lot harder work. There's no doubt about that, it was. Maybe that's why I didn't like them. Your trousers, many a time, were scorching. That's another reason I didn't like them. I didn't like passenger work. And many a time also when you got home, I've had to pull my vest off because of the sweat and my vest sticking to my body. But that was only when you was on the main line. Now, eventually, when diesel took over, obviously they didn't require the staff, and a crowd of us were made redundant. But rather than leave in 1960, that's when I came out as a goods guard. And I can also say I really enjoyed doing it. No, the railwaymen, as I know, I had 41 years with them. And there's no doubt about it, they're smashing lot of blokes. There's no doubt about it. I would class them as the same as the forces. I really would.
My name's Peter Clark. I started at British Rail in 1962 at Burton-on-Trent in the S&T department, Signal and Telegraph, that is, as apprentice, which was training as general maintenance on signals, on points, signal boxes, and travelling a fairly great area, right up to Leicester, around that way. Thing was, I found as a young lad was fascinating, was working and meeting with so many different people, not only English people, but from Italy, India, and several other parts of the country. Thing thing also was fascinating was the chance of being able to actually ride on the footplate of a train, of a locomotive, and seeing the fireman fry his eggs and bacons on the shovel. And it's just a fascinating way of life. And it was a way of life separate from Civvy Street. We used to travel also on the guard's brake of a freight train. That was also sometimes scary if you got a rough driver up front, because you could see daylight through the floorboards that he was that rough. One thing the guard would say to you as soon as you got into the actual guard's brake is to hang on to something that's not moving. In 1967 I moved to Grantham, where I started on the Grantham platform as a porter. Then they altered the grading and I went out as on general purpose relief as a railman, covering all platform duties, level crossings, and also going down to the freight yard. And then I came out of the relief and went on permanent on the platform, and one of the duties on the platform was actually shunting. And of course there you're working with train crews actually shunting your trains out or putting the engine onto the actual passenger train. And one of the great pleasures was actually working with some of the really good drivers, such as Fred Burrows, better known as Ike Burrows, and quite a few more. But they made my job easy. If you got a bad driver, shunting could be difficult. And a lot of our blokes used to consider the shunter and make it a lot easier to actually work the train. One of the things about Grantham Station and the train crews as well is that we had a funny habit of falling out between us. Not actually falling out, but shouting at each other or telling each other where to go. And foreign drivers couldn't understand this, foreign crews couldn't understand us at all, because we'd be like that and then the next minute we'd be mashing tea at each other or having a joke with each other. One thing with working on the railway in itself was a way of life. It was friendship, what I don't think you would find outside. It was interesting, different people you met, different people you worked with, and also you went into other industries. You might have to go and do some work in the factory layout or quarries or even two mines, and that gives you a different aspect on life, on how other people worked, and what it was like to do different jobs as well as your own. But I would never change again. If I'd my time over again, I'd still go on the railway.
Albert Willis is 93 next birthday. He ended his career working on a little Peckett steam engine in Aveling Barford Yard, but not before he had encountered a monster locomotive.
I was born in Grantham, up Victoria Street, on 17th of October 1908. I spent all my life on railways. Moved about a time or two. First went to Norwich. After about a year at Norwich, the vacancy list come out for spare fireman. I was only cleaning at the time. But I'd moved to Norwich because it was, you got promotion quicker than at Grantham. You're waiting for dead men's shoes at Grantham. And the seniority list come out, and it was, there was a regular firing job at a place called Wentworth Junction in Yorkshire. And oh, I can get that, it's in my seniority date. It was 8th of February 1926 when I started. So applied for it, and I got it. And I said to the mates there, I says, I've got that vacancy. Which one? I says, Wentworth Junction. Yeah, Slim. I says, what's wrong? Do you know what's there? I said, no. He says, the Garrett. You know what a Garrett is? It's a big engine. It's the biggest locomotive ever built on British Railways. And I had to go firing on that. And it was hard work. And it was banking trains up Wentworth Junction to Barnsley Junction, up a steep gradient, 1 in 40. And you went through 2 tunnels. And so you pushed the train up at the back. And there was 2 gas masks on one for the driver and one for the farmer when you went through these tunnels, because it was so hot.
In the Grantham Journal of February the 16th, 1990, there was an article by journalist Mel Rolfe entitled, "It's the End of the Line." Mel Rolfe.
Nearly 600 men once worked at the Grantham train crew depot. Now there are none. Where once stood a cheerful, clamorous sprawl of giant, clanking locomotives, vast sheds and workshops dating back more than 100 years, there is only ugly wasteland, stretching dismally into the distance from number 4 platform. Forlorn indentations among the weeds remind old railwaymen of the tracks they once rode on, gleaming giants like the Flying Scotsman and the record-breaking Mallard. The American can factory in Springfield Road rivals in bulk the top locomotive shed it eventually replaced. Grantham was once of major strategic importance to British Rail. Grantham crews and locomotives worked mainline duties to London, Leeds and Newcastle, and many branch lines. Nearly 1,000 men worked at the depot, known affectionately as the Loco, and at the station. 6 local signal boxes with their ranks of long metal levers, which no weakling could have budged, have all gone. A single large signal box 50 miles north at Doncaster, packed with push-button electronic wizardry, controls the main line as far south as the Stoke Tunnel near Stoke Rochford. Beyond Stoke, the track is handled by Peterborough. There was the awesome coaling tower, known as the Cenotaph, a notable landmark. It's gone. A huge tank holding 200,000 gallons of water dwarfed the terraced houses in Launder Terrace. It's gone. So has the old loco shed near the station, the goods shed and the profusion of sidings, while the plate layers, huts and the Lincoln platform have been swept away for car parking. Although most drivers welcomed the cleanliness and efficiency of the new diesels in 1963, it was these colourless monsters which eventually robbed them of their livelihood. Many jobs were phased out, for, unlike steam locomotives, the diesels on long runs did not need to be changed or declinkered at Grantham. Many branch lines were closed, including those to Lincoln, Leicester, Derby, Friargate, Sproson, Stainby and Netherfield. Another blow came in 1973 when the 7-mile High Dyke line was shut. This line served the iron ore quarries at Sproson, Colsterworth and beyond. Every day a dozen trains, each loaded with 2,000 tons of iron ore, pulled into Grantham, then rumbled on to smelting plants at Scunthorpe, Sheffield and Colic. Imports of better quality iron ore from Australia and Sweden closed the local quarries. There was said to be enough iron ore left for them to be worked for another 300 years. Not only did the railwaymen love their work, they nurtured a great civic pride. 8 of them served as mayors of Grantham. They were the splendidly named Barleythorn King, Wilf Ogden, Bill Heath, Joe Hardacre, Bill Goodliff, Walter Dale, Lloyd Ramsden and Fred Burrows, who has had 2 terms as the town's first citizen. After years of diminishing work and a stealthily increasing number of redundancies, the Grantham depot was closed for good on January the 22nd, 1990.
Before we leave the steam age, it is fitting that we honour and mourn those people who were killed, injured or suffered as a result of the 1906 Grantham Rail Crash. Also those involved in the recent tragedies on the East Coast Main Line. As railway enthusiast Steve Herco tells the story of the 1906 crash, we hear a requiem sung in Latin, in Paradisum deducant angeli. God's holy angels lead you to paradise. May saints in their glory receive you at your journey's end.
Despite intense speculation, the cause of the Grantham Railway disaster on the night of Wednesday the 19th of September 1906 will remain a mystery. The engine, belonging to Great Northern Railway and only 2 years old, was a large boilered, fast-running Atlantic steam locomotive. Its haul was the 8:45 p.m. King's Cross to Edinburgh 12-vehicle Scotch Express. The train consisted of sleeping cars, ordinary coaches and mail vans. Driver for the fateful Peterborough to Doncaster part of the journey was 45-year-old Fred Fleetwood, an experienced engine driver. As his regular fireman had flu, temporary fireman for the night was 23-year-old Ralph Talbot. Talbot was a premium apprentice, a management trainee sent out to gain first-hand practical experience. It must be said that the Doncaster engine men and their trade union criticised the use of inexperienced premium apprentices on firing work. However, there is nothing to suggest that Fleetwood and Talbot were not on the best of terms. Indeed, they had worked the same run together on previous nights, and there lies another possible cause of the disaster. They were 8 minutes late into Grantham on the night before. Drivers not keeping to time in those days were hit where it hurt most by deductions in their wage packet. Fleetwood would have been desperate to avoid losing time 2 nights in a row. The train left Peterborough on time at 10:20 with the addition and extra weight of a coffin-carrying van for the 40-minute, 29.25-mile journey to Grantham. But by Corby Glen, as they began the slow 3-mile climb to Stoke Summit, they were again running late. In the absence of overloading or mechanical failure, the most likely cause of lost time was shortage of steam. This could have been due to the inexperience of Talbot in properly spreading the coal he threw into the firebox. What is known, and was common practice, was that Fleetwood attempted to make up for lost time on the 5-mile descent from the summit. Faster and faster, Atlantic number 276 passed through Great Ponton at 60 miles per hour. She still showed no signs of stopping as she passed the south signal box, a mere 500 yards from Grantham Station. As the train hurtled downhill, Signalman Day saw driver and fireman standing on the footplate. Did Fleetwood, anxious about the time, forget that he was stopping in Grantham? Surely both men couldn't have forgotten, and as the signalman saw them standing upright, they couldn't have been taken ill. The train continued. Then, right at the last minute, the vacuum brake was applied, but too late to save it from disaster. The wheels locked into a slide. To the horror of station staff, postmen and waiting passengers, the Scotch Express, still doing about 50 miles per hour, shot straight through the station, scattering parcels from platform barrows in its wake. It continued through the red signal at the end of the platform, beyond which the points were still set to divert to the Nottingham line. At 11:03, the sound of the crash was heard all over Grantham. The derailed train crashed into the bridge over Harloxton and Old Wharf roads, sending the carriages plummeting down the embankment. Fleetwood and Talbot were killed outright, along with 9 passengers and a post office attendant working on the train. 2 more passengers died later. The Board of Trade Enquiry concluded that the cause of the crash remained a mystery, but was most likely down to human error. Did the extra weight of the coffin car added at Peterborough, and remarkably undamaged in the crash, contribute to the slow run and then the train being unable to stop? And the disaster's final victim, Signalman Scoffin of the North Box, died in 1914 after worrying about the disaster. He never forgave himself for leaving the points at the Nottingham Junction set against the doomed express. It is said that as his funeral cortege passed under Harlexton Road Bridge, there on top was Atlantic number 276, waiting to move into the railway yard. Was this the engine paying her last respects to Mr. Scoffin? It would be good to think so.
We now travel to the present-day station where Don and Linda Charles run the Steamers Railway Station Buffet.
We open we open at 6 o'clock, but we're here from 5:15, checking the papers, counting the papers, making sure that they're all there, and more important, make sure the tea boiler's on and up and running for people usually arriving about 6 a.m. And then it's all mad rush, the commuters, really till 7:30 the mad rush is. After 7:30 it dies down a little bit, and then, I don't know, about 8:15 it seems to start again with people who going to meetings or people going out for the day. And well, then it can die down a little bit again and then go crazy again. But no 2 days are the same. In the morning we have a few people that come that we call commuters, regulars. But you just never know who you're going to see here, really. You know, a complete cross-section of people. We've nearly got the hang of it now. We've been here for 19 years in April. So we think we know how to do it now. In the old days, the newspapers used to come up on the train and used to be sorted out down in the yard here. But nowadays it's all, since the Wapping job, it's all comes on lorries now to a local wholesaler, Eaton's, who provides with a really good service. And they bring them to us any time, 5 a.m. Leave them here for us, and then we sort them out ready for opening.
I'm in charge of hiring the staff, firing the staff, making sure the day-to-day running of the business is all done correctly, keeping everywhere clean, doing the paperwork, making sure everything's ordered, making sure everything's delivered on time, correctly delivered and everything. And then we do various foods. We do mainline breakfast, which we serve all day, which is 2 egg, 2 bacon, 2 sausage, beans, tomatoes, bread and butter. We do omelettes. Most popular we've been told all over England is our bacon rolls. Up and down the track they come for our bacon rolls. Various sandwiches we sell. Loads and loads of sandwiches. The commuters take them all down to London because they're better value and very well made by my staff. But most of all, I've got a very good, loyal staff. And it's very hard these days to find staff that will come out or do anything that you ask them to. So thank you.
Elizabeth Hazelwood is a regular traveller.
I'm lucky enough to live near the East Coast Railway line, which received a great deal of funding towards electrification and general modernisation of stations just prior to privatisation. I regularly commute between Grantham and Doncaster where I work. I much prefer to do the 100-mile round trip by train rather than in the car on the very busy A1. It's comfortable and clean and I can work during the journey. It's also pretty relaxing apart from those dreadful mobile phones. I can meet other passengers and there's always a friendly welcome from the station staff, which is a good start to the day, unless of course the train's delayed. Obviously, in the aftermath of the Hatfield crash, there were lots of delays and uncertainty surrounding the length of journeys and so on. And then with the tragedy at Selby, there were further major disruptions to journeys. However, on the whole, passengers are a fairly stoical lot and reasonably patient. We seem to adapt quite quickly to having to spend more time sitting on a railway station.
Derek Pegg is a former guard. Now part of the platform staff, he has been responsible for a very special member of the team, the station cat.
Yes, we had the station cat. He arrived on the station when they knocked the goods shed down. He lived on there. He was virtually wild when he lived there, and eventually he came on and we started feeding him, and then he became part of the team, and he lived in the old loco mess room at the south end of the station. All shifts used to feed him, And then he eventually moved down to the present offices where we are now, and we've looked after him for about 16 years. He used to jump across the track at one time, but as he got older he couldn't do that. And one night I took him over the bridge, because he goes onto the waste ground in the old goods yard, and ever since that he used to come backwards and forwards over the bridge when he wanted to go over there. Everybody used to bring him food. His favourite food was Whiskers or Kitty Cat, Felix, any of the expensive brands. And it was liked by everybody. There was drivers from Boston used to bring him food, and some of the passengers used to bring him food as well. It was really liked by all the people that passed through the station.
At the north end of Platform 1, there is a small, lovingly tended grave around which winter pansies grow in purple profusion.
Yes, unfortunately we lost the cat last September due to a road vehicle hitting him just outside the station. It was rather unfortunate because everybody misses him, and he's left a lot of golden memories, and we really miss him.
Simon Pashley of GNER.
I've been with GNER now for 6 months, customer service delivery manager for Grantham and Newark, and exciting times on the railway. It's a small, friendly station, Grantham. We've got a small, close-knit team, a blend of experience and youngsters, capable of doing all things that's necessary with a small station. Our aim as part of GNER is the customers always first. We value our customers at Grantham. We aim to continue to be a friendly station, welcoming, a clean environment where people can come, and it's a pleasure to travel with GNER before and during the journey. There's always staff present, smart in uniforms, to deal with any queries any people may have. And our aim is to make people comfortable, whether they're seasoned travellers or new to the railway or leisure, so everyone feels the same comfort when they come on the station, whether they're old or young. We hope at Grantham to continue to uphold GNER's traditions and forward core values, and as a company look forward to many people coming to the station and remember it as a welcoming experience, and they want to come back again.
Our children are the seed corn for the future. Miranda, aged 10, loves travelling on trains. With enthusiasm such as hers, surely we can look forward with hope and confidence.
I like travelling on trains. My favourite journey on a train is from Grantham to London, because there are many attractions on that journey that you can see close up from a train window. You can also see views of the countryside that you will not be able to see from a car window. I also like travelling on trains because you can get about and go to the refreshment area, and you can meet lots of different people. I also think it's a good idea to travel by on a train, because in cars you are adding more pollution. It is also environmentally friendly, and I feel as though I'm doing something good. And I hope that when I'm older, more people from Grantham and other parts of the country will be going on trains more than they do now, so that we can help with global warming.
Visit our website, gravityfm.net. Local radio for local people.
On Gravity FM.